Good evening. I would like to welcome you to the December 13th, 2021 meeting of the City Plan Commission. Before we begin, I will outline the procedure that we will follow for our public hearing. As each agenda item is called, the applicant or his or her representative and persons for the request will be allowed to speak. Then persons against the request will be allowed to speak. If there is opposition to the request, the applicant will be allowed to make a short rebuttal. All persons wishing to speak need to come to the microphone at the front of the room. Please state your name and address for the record. All statements made should be relevant to the agenda item and limited to 3 minutes. If there are several persons in favor or opposed to a request, we encourage you to allow 1 or 2 persons to act as spokesperson for the group. If you like, a spokesperson for a group may request that the group stand and be recognized. While public discourse is very important to the Commission, we have to maintain order in the meeting so that all persons may be heard and city business may be conducted. If so directed by me, the Sergeant at Arms shall remove from this meeting any person while addressing the Commission or while attending the Commission meeting. Those making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks who become boisterous or making unauthorized remarks from the audience, stomping of feet, whistles, yells, or similar demonstrations. The Commission members have reviewed each of these items in a previous work session. The recommendation we make tonight to the City Council will be based on the work session and the information provided by staff, as well as any additional information presented tonight. After completing the hearing on each item, the Commission will consider action on the item. The action taken tonight on these items will be in the form of a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council will also conduct a hearing on these items, which will be held on Tuesday, December 21st, 2021, and January 18th, 2022, at 6 p.m. in the Bosque Theater of the Waco Convention Center, 100 Washington Avenue. The record and recommendation of the Plan Commission and new testimony will be considered by the Council at that time. The first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of our November 15th, 2021 work session and November 15th, 2021 business meeting. Are there any changes or additions? Seeing none, they stand approved as written. The first item on our agenda will be our subdivisions. If staff could present those to us.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is a public hearing on a request for a variance to the requirement for block length per the City of Waco subdivision ordinance for the proposed subdivision plat entitled Final Plat and Construction Plans of the Preserve at Bosque Bend Addition Phase 3. Staff recommends that the variance request concerning the block length dimensions per section 6.201 of the subdivision ordinance for the preserve at Bosque Bend Addition Phase 3 be approved in accordance with section 7.1001 of the subdivision ordinance and based on the following findings. 1, extraordinary hardships or significant practical difficulties may result from strict compliance with the subdivision ordinance regulations, and A, the effect of the variance will not be detrimental to the public safety, health, welfare, or injurious to other property, and B, due to the specific conditions or topography of the site involved, strict enforcement of these regulations would impose an undue hardship on the applicant.
Thank you. Is the applicant or his or her representative here to speak on the item? You could state your name and address for the Commission.
Yes, sir. Good evening. My name is Jacob Bell with Walker Partners. Address is 823 Washington Avenue. We are the civil engineers designing this subdivision on behalf of the developer and submitted this variance request as was read aloud. Be happy to answer any questions that the Commission may have on this or any other aspect of the subdivision.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Bell? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Is anyone here to speak any additional people here to speak in favor of the item? Any in opposition to this item? Okay. Any further questions by commissioners? Okay. We have a recommendation of approval for the variance from city staff, and we will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we recommend approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Please poll the Commission.
Browse. Cole.
Yes.
Fajardo.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Jefferson. Ramos.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Vickers.
Yes.
All Motion passes. I believe our next item is the final plat of the same item. Is that the case?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a public hearing on a request for final plat and construction plans of the preserve at Bosque Bend Addition Phase 3, and staff does recommend approval of this request with conditions.
All right. Thank you. Open the public hearing. If the applicant or his representative has anything else to add, we'll entertain that. Anyone speak in opposition? Close public hearing. We have a recommendation of approval on the final plat and construction plans. If anyone would like, or do we have any questions by commissioners before we entertain a motion?
This is a recommendation from city staff,
Sorry,
with
approval with conditions.
approval with condition, okay.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve per city recommendations with approval of restrictions. What's the word? Sorry.
Conditions.
Conditions. It's been a while.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please poll the commission.
Cole,
Yes.
Fajardo? Yes. Harris?
Yes.
Jefferson? Ramos?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Vickers?
Yes.
Motion passes. In the remaining subdivision plots, what's the recommendation of city staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a public hearing on a request for the following subdivision plats. Final plat and construction plans of the Creekside Addition Phase 10, amended preliminary plat of the Thanksgiving Park Addition, preliminary plat of the Lake Ridge Estates Addition, ETJ, final plat and construction plans of the Sun West Village Addition, Part 12, and final plat and construction plans of the Oak Bluffs Phase 2 Addition, ETJ, and city staff recommends approval of all of these subdivision plats.
Thank you. On any of these items, is the applicant or his or her representative here to speak? Would anybody else like to speak in favor of this application? These applications? Anyone in opposition to these applications? We'll close the public hearing. Do we have any further discussion by commissioners? Okay. On items 3 through 7 of our agenda, we have a recommendation of approval from city staff, and we will entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'd like the motion that we recommend approval based upon staff's finding.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please poll the commission.
Cole,
Yes.
Fajardo?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes?
Ramos?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Vickers?
Yes.
Motion passes. In the case of Z-21-80, what is the recommendation of city staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is public hearing on a request from Lance and Ashley Kelly for property at 5601 Oakview Street for a special permit for a short-term rental type 1 in an R1B district. We mailed out 46 notices for this request, had 7 returned, 3 in favor, 2 opposed, 1 with concerns, and 1 with no comment. Planning Services recommends approval of the special permit subject to special provisions and conditions and based on the following findings. 1, that the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive plan. 2, that the proposed use is compatible with the appropriate and orderly development of the area in which it is located. 3, that the proposed use would not be more objectionable to neighboring properties because of traffic congestion, noise, fumes, vibrations, or any other characteristics in any use permitted in the zoning district without the grant of a special exception. And 4, that available community facilities and services, including the road system providing access to the proposed use, are adequate for the proposed use. These findings are required for the granting of a special permit as per section 28-122 of the City of Waco zoning ordinance.
Thank you. We'll now open the public hearing. Is the applicant or his or her representative here to speak in favor of the item? Come on down and state your name for the commission and name and address for the commission and any statement.
I'm Lance Kelly. My wife and I submitted the application, here to answer questions.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have questions for Mr. Kelly? Thank you, sir. Is anyone else here to speak in favor of this item? Is anyone here to speak in opposition to this item? Okay. Folks, come on down. If you can state your name and address, and make your statement to the commission.
My name is Janice Kriegel. I live at 2324 Rosewood Drive, and I live right across the creek from the people that are trying to get the rental. And I'll tell you, noise carries like crazy across that creek. In the evening when I call my cat, I have 2 outdoor cats in the daytime, and I call them in because we have wildlife that comes up through the lake, through that back ravine. And when I whistle, their children whistle back at me, and they're across, so I know that they hear me. And we hear their children on the trampoline, which is no problem. They're in the daytime and they're having fun. It's no big deal. But I'm afraid that at night, if they have, we've heard from other, people that rent just overnight, that sometimes you get drinkers, and I'm a drinker, but, in other words, partiers. Anyway, if they have parties, or if they go down in that ravine and explore, I'm afraid it'll ruin our park-like setting. And we've already noticed beer cans down there and trash down in the ravine that hasn't been there in a long time. So I'm real concerned, very concerned. And there's neighbors in the neighborhood that feel the same way we do, but they couldn't come tonight. So would it help to get a petition for those people to sign, or what should we do?
The city does notice at 200 foot, is that correct? 200 foot, if your property line is within 200 feet of the property, those neighbors should have received comment cards in the mail. As I mentioned earlier, and just as a reminder, this will be on the January 18th council agenda. And so if we recommend approval, there's still the opportunity to, yes, talk to neighbors, and whether it be a petition or have folks come in person to that meeting, that would be an opportunity.
There are a lot of elderly people.
Okay.
That I've been on Rosewood for 58 years.
Okay.
So, and there are some of them that have been there almost as long as I have. My
Okay.
parents bought there when I was 11, and so, anyway, they don't get out at night.
Okay.
But they would be happy to sign a petition or whatever, or give me this, to speak for them.
Sure. I am sure something like that could be taken into account, and I'm sure city staff could help determine the best route to do that.
Okay.
Again, if necessary at the council meeting. So.
We also have a park up there at Mountain View School it's at the end of the block. And I don't know, if it's only a one-room thing, they couldn't have too many kids that would be up at the park, but I don't know. I don't know why they wanted 4 car spaces for a one-room cabin. That's another thing that kind of worried me. But okay, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. Is there any questions from Ms. Kriegel?
I'm here with Janice Kriegel. I'm Frank Angeli, and I'm familiar with the property. There's 5 or 6 houses on Rosewood that back up to a fence, and this property needs to have an aerial looked at it before you approve it, because the drainage ditch comes all the way from the street, which is Oakview, and it's behind the supply of cable vision and all that kind of stuff that's back there. It's about a 35 to 40 foot wide drainage ditch at one time. It goes below the property, and it goes all the length of the Rosewood properties, and starts with 3 on the corner and goes all the way to the end of the property. But when you go around the property, you notice that there's another drainage ditch on the west side of it that also drains into that area. And why 7 acres becomes a camping ground or a playground for somebody with a one-room cabin, it doesn't explain it at this point for me to accept it. I have real estate, and I have property in Cameron Park, and there's a lot of conditions put on what you can and can't do. And if this thing is going to be like an overnight rental and subject to people coming in there, and you've got a drainage ditch, you've got animals, there are raccoons and other things back there, if they go exploring in that 7.5 acres, I don't know what they could find. So you're dealing with a situation that needs an overview or conditions to say, what is it going to be used for and why is it 7 acres? When if you go back and look, there's a steep hill, there's people on top of it that have got their backyards there. Now, we're granted that now we're in, the winter time that you can see completely through there and all the sound comes from all the houses. So with that in mind, they need to think about the use of the 7.5 acres and also the situation with all the drainage. Anything else?
Tell them about the snakes.
Huh?
Tell them we do have poisonous.
Oh, there's plenty of poison snakes there too.
We have copperheads.
That's 7.5 acres, and it does take it out to the lake. We have friends that are on the other side towards Lakeshore Drive, and that same gully does lead all the way to the lake, and it leads back around to the other house that was a rental unit also for the Magnolia people. So we do have that in the area already.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who is here to speak in opposition to this item? If you can state your name and address, and then you can make your comment.
I'm Jane Winston, and I live at 5701 Oakview. There's one property between me and the Kelly's home. And I had 2 neighbors that were going to come with me tonight as well, but they're elderly and were afraid they'd fall in the parking lot. So we have some concerns. We're not sure what short-term, the definition of short-term is. Is that a 1 night, 1 week?
Less than 30 days, I believe, is the
Less than 30 days?
definition.
Okay, and is this only for existing structures that are standing on the property?
I'll let city confirm that, but yes, I believe so. Yeah, it's specifically in regards to the one-room building that's off the main house. So that's what the special permit's being granted for.
Okay, would extra driveways be opened up in that area to get back to that house?
I believe and Steve, please feel free to correct me if I misspeak. I think currently the current driveway and parking situation allows sufficient parking for what the needs of the permit would be. I don't think that necessarily prohibits further driveway construction in the future, but it doesn't require it.
Okay, how long would this variance be in effect for? If the Kellys sell in 2 years from now, whoever purchases that property, will this transfer to them so they can go back and build 6 more guest houses in the area?
The special permit will only apply to this sort of guest quarters on the property, and it is not transferable with sale. So if somebody purchased the property, they'd have to go through this process again by reapplying.
Okay, and the Kellys, it's just the one standing property. They couldn't improve that, add on other properties?
Correct. The way the conditions are stated, it would be for the one property as it currently is. The Kellys would need to continue residing in the primary residence and would be required to be residing in the residence at the time when people would stay on in that guest quarters. So
Okay, what can we do as neighbors if we do get a 30-day rental and they are partiers and we have 15 cars parked along the street? What is our recourse as neighbors?
Certainly, and staff can maybe speak more to the specific places that you could reach out to in that event. But with the special permits, if the applicants of the Kellys are using it in a way that it is not intended, having more than, having people there when they're not there, not sticking with the sound requirements, things like that, that the special permit can be revoked. There's actually more recourse for you as an adjoining property owner with a short-term rental permit than say with a long-term tenant. So depending on how you look at it, that could be a positive
Okay.
in that situation. But staff can speak any further to that if they have anything.
Yes, so we have a list of 10 conditions for this special permit. The majority of them address the requirements for a license. We do have a separate ordinance that outlines all of the requirements for a short-term rental license. And so for the zoning, the R1B single-family zoning, they have to go through the special permit process to be able to even consider short-term rental type 1, which is the owner-occupied, as Mr. Harris stated. They would have to continue to reside in the main residence. They could only rent to one group at a time. And then if the special permit is approved by council, then they're required to abide by these conditions and then also acquire a license, go through a life safety inspection for the unit, making sure that it meets all safety standards, obviously because they're opening it up for the public for compensation. And then they would have to renew their license every 2 years. If the property does sell, then it's not transferable. As Mr. Harris stated, they would have to go through this public hearing process if the property sells and they want to continue to operate as a short-term rental. We do have a monitoring system in place that the city has, and we also partner with a third-party company that monitors advertisements to make sure that the property is advertised in accordance with what was approved with a special permit and with the license. We do also, once the property is licensed as a short-term rental, if it is licensed, we do mail a notice to all property owners within 200 feet with contact information for the designated operator in case there are any issues, beyond business hours. Then you have someone to get a hold of if you have any issues with the short-term rental.
Okay. Is there a way we can get the list of the 10 conditions?
Sure,
that you
absolutely.
have?
I can give you my copy.
Wonderful, thank you.
That information is also available on our website. With the notices that you received in the mail, there's a link for that Plan Commission meeting information page that includes the staff report and all of the conditions.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, are there any additional individuals here to speak in opposition to the item?
Can I query one thing?
Certainly.
Why is the whole 7.5 acres included? Because most of it is just the backside of the hill and the drainage ditches over there.
Well, so by our record, we've got it at 3.2. Oh, I may have misread that. You're right. So no. But the reason is it's all one lot under the city's. It's all platted, I guess, as one lot. Well, it's I guess, and maybe y'all can probably speak more to that.
Yeah, so the legal description does state that it's 3.12 acres for this one property. It does look like it's separate parcels, but all one property with one address, and so it was all included. Part of the reason for that is also to make sure that we capture the entire property and then set the boundaries for noticing within 200 feet appropriately, so that any property owners adjacent to any lot lines would also be notified.
Thanks.
But it is limited to this cottage that's being proposed for short-term rental.
Right. So did that make sense? I suppose.
Well, I know the property. I've walked around it. I've walked on the backside to look at the concept. And excuse me, I'm a CPA, and I've done people who have had short-term rentals, and they come across all kinds of problems. But the thing that concerns me is, of course, I saw that the one room or the one bedroom deal parcel is in the middle of the parcel pretty much, which would not limit the full use of the property to people who are going to be there. it's gonna be hard to tell if they're in the cabin or if they got children. We love children, don't get me wrong. And we enjoy seeing them on the trampolines. I've got 3 grandkids, she's got them too. And so we're looking at the possibility of what can happen. You know, will they get air rifles to go out there and start shooting? There's a lot of what ifs.
Sure.
Short-term.
The best I can say, I guess, is, would be if this is recommended and if council passes it, there are, as Ms. Wharton stated, I mean, there would be a number of contact numbers provided where directly to y'all as adjoining property owners and neighbors, so that if that occurred, you would have the correct contact information to not only address that situation in its as it was happening, but also that would, I guess, put into effect a review of the property, or at least have the property be under closer watch, I guess.
I know there's noise conditions in the city of Waco. Are there lighting conditions in that type of situation where you've got potential for lighting to come in on the back of 4 major lots that don't have any trees and so forth at this point? Will they be held at 10 o'clock or 10:30, condition that there not be extreme lights out there?
Well, I think they're required to not be a nuisance to neighboring properties. So I guess in that scenario, that would be another scenario where you could reach out to the city and have the city address that. So, okay. Any additional people who would like to speak in opposition to the item? Okay. Mr. Kelly, would you like to just make a short response or answer any questions that were posed?
We don't anticipate any of the significant problems that were raised. I think that we've been incredibly respectful of the land and the space up until now, and wouldn't anticipate making any big changes, or the cabin is pretty small. So, and I think the 4 parking spaces had to do with something that was required to be able to demonstrate that it was available. So, and, you know, concerns about, there is the runoff from the city. So, I mean, it runs, I don't know how long, 150 yards or so. We have done everything we can to clean that regularly. So, me and my family. And so I do think that we've been respectful of the space.
Are there any questions for Mr. Kelly? Thanks, sir.
Thanks.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion or questions before we close the public hearing? Close the public hearing. We do have a recommendation of approval from city staff, and we will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like the motion that we recommend approval based upon staff's finding.
Second.
We have a motion for approval and a second as well. Motion by Mr. Ramos, second by Mr. Vickers. Do we have any final discussion? Okay, please poll the commission.
Cole,
Yes.
Fajardo,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Ramos,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Vickers.
Yes.
And Ross, can I make a comment on that before we?
Please do, please do.
We talked this before. I just want to address y'all that came out to speak against it. I want to let you know at least why I voted to approve. I think your concerns are valid, but there are, again, multiple steps in this process before a final license is actually approved for the short-term rental. So while our hearing at this point says that, hey, minimum requirements are met for this zoning requirement or zoning part of the application, there's still Other hearings you guys can go to address your concerns, and again, with the licensing specifically, there's a whole different process to actually have the short-term rental fully approved. So I appreciate you guys coming out and addressing those concerns. So I just want to let you know that's why I approved.
And just to reiterate, January 18th will be the council meeting that it's on the agenda for. Okay, we will move to case Z-21-81. In this item, or in this case, what is the recommendation of city staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a public hearing on a request from Jed Cole for property at 1229 Washington Avenue to rezone from C3 to C4. And just wanted to note that Jed Cole, Plan Commission member, has filled out an affidavit of substantial interest, and therefore he's disqualified from partaking in this request. We mailed out 17 notices and had 0 returned on this application. Planning Services recommends approval of this request to change the zoning from C3 to C4 based on the following findings. 1, the proposed zoning is in conformance with the land use component of the comprehensive plan and the Imagine Waco plan for greater downtown. 2, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in the C4 zoning district. And 3, C4 is the dominant zoning along Washington Avenue starting in this block and moving east towards the Brazos River.
Thank you. Is the applicant or his or her representative here to speak or would like to speak? Is anyone here to, anyone in favor of the item here to speak? Is anyone opposed to this item here to speak? We will close the public hearing. We have a recommendation of approval from city staff, and we will entertain a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to motion recommend approval based upon staff's finding that this is in conformance with the land use component of the comprehensive plan and Imagine Waco A plan greater downtown, and that it is, C4 is the dominant zoning along with Washington Avenue.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ramos, second by Ms. Reynolds. Do we have any further discussion before we take a vote? Please poll the commission.
Fajardo?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Ramos?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Vickers?
Yes.
Motion passes. In the case of Z-21-82, what is the recommendation of city staff?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a public hearing on a request from Dan Obad on behalf of Hesborn Obad for property at 518 and 524 North 5th Street to rezone from C3 to O2. Staff mailed out 30 notices. We had 1 return in favor. Planning Services recommends approval of the request to change the zoning from C3 to O2 based on the following findings. Proposed zoning is in conformance with the land use component of the comprehensive plan and the Imagine Waco plan for greater downtown. The public infrastructure is adequate to provide for the uses in the O2 zoning district. The property meets all area and width requirements for the O2 zoning district. There is O2 zoning in the vicinity of the subject property, and O2 zoning brings existing residential uses into conformance with the zoning ordinance.
Thank you. Is the applicant or his or her representative here to speak on this item? If you'd like to come down and speak, you're welcome to. State your name and address.
My name is Dan Obat, and I'm the applicant, and I'm here to answer any questions or concerns.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Obat?
Mr. Obat, just wondering, what is the proposed use for this property?
We're going to turn it into a short-term rental.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah, the only thing on that is that it's just to consider all the potential uses that could be going into the O2 zoning district.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, just to restate, this is not a motion for a short-term rental, but would include all uses under O2 zoning. Okay. Is anyone else here to speak in favor of this item? Is anyone here to speak in opposition to this item? Okay. We will close the public hearing. We have a recommendation of approval on this item by city staff, and we will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the motion.
Second.
We have a motion to approve from Mr. Vickers and a second from Ms. Reynolds. Do we have any final discussion before we vote? Please poll the commission.
Cole,
Yes.
Fajardo,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Ramos,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Vickers.
Yes.
Motion passes. In the case of Z-21-83, what is the recommendation of city staff?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a public hearing on a request from Jonathan Sibley on behalf of Sibley Family Investments LLC, Series 2304 Washington Avenue, for property at 2304 Washington Avenue to rezone from C2 to O3. We mailed out 27 notices and had one return in favor. Planning Services recommends approval of this request to change the zoning from C2 to O3 based on the following findings. The proposed zoning is in conformance with the land use component of the comprehensive plan and the Imagine Waco, a plan for greater downtown. The public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in the O3 zoning district. The property meets all the area and width requirements of the O3 zoning district. There is O3 zoning in the vicinity of the subject property. O3 zoning brings existing residential uses into conformance with the zoning ordinance.
Randy, thank you. We'll open the public hearing. Is the applicant or his or her representative here to speak? Yes, sir. Now, state your name and address and address the commission.
I'm Jonathan Sibley on behalf of Sibley Family Investments. I'm the sponsor of this. I live in Woodway, but this is a property I purchased with the intention of making it into a short-term rental. I believe there are other short-term rentals on the property, or not on that property, but in that area, general vicinity, and I would just ask the council to approve it, and also thank you for your time and attention this evening.
Any questions for Mr. Sibley? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Is anyone else here to speak in favor of this item? Is anyone here to speak in opposition to this item? You can come down, state your name and address, and then you can make your comments to the commission.
Steve Cates, 1512 Columbus Avenue. So I own, that's 2304, I have 2316 and 2322 Washington. My daughter's living in 2322, which I renovated for her. 2316, I shut down the renovation during COVID because it's just hard to get anything done last year. My intention is to turn what is 2316 from a duplex into a single house, single family household. I did not argue against 2324 and 2326 when it went to 03. I was having difficulty discerning the difference in the two and what it would allow. They both now are short-term rentals, and 2326 not only is short-term rental, but they've added another residence behind it, or another rental unit behind it. Now, I didn't mail this in because I was out last week and I didn't find this until I got back this weekend. But I did spend some time on the phone today with a couple of different people in the planning office. They're very helpful, but I couldn't get a clear answer, and it might have been my inability to state a question that was succinct enough to get a clear answer. But I do know that once the C2 went to 03, 2 short-term rentals popped up. So I question why, if this, I don't agree that the whole block is short-term rentals. We do have some short-term rentals in the area. So if this is in order to make it a short-term rental, I'd prefer that it not be passed. And I think I have 2 homes that are within the 200-foot mark.
Just to specifically address one thing, just like in the prior agenda item, regardless of what Mr. Sibley's intentions are, the application is not for a short-term rental. It is just simply a zoning change, and that therefore allows all uses under that zoning change, regardless of what the applicant, so we're considering that regardless of what the applicant is intending to do.
Sure.
So,
and that was my question to the city planning department. Does the change from C2 to O3 enhance the potential for that going into a short-term rental? It's like a 5-bedroom small house with another facility behind it. It's always been, to my knowledge, and I've owned those houses for a long time, it's always been just a rented unit. So is there a change, does the zoning change from C2 to O3 have anything to do with the potential for that being a short-term rental?
I'll let staff speak to the particulars. We discussed this in our work session, but I do believe it opens up residential usage by right versus by being sort of grandfathered in, but I'll let staff speak to that more specifically, and if that may be incorrect.
Sure. So I'll first highlight the differences between C2 and O3 in general, and then address that specific question. So C2 does not allow single family. So currently the houses that are single family within the C2 zoning are considered legally non-conforming because they've been there since prior to the ordinance being adopted. And so they can continue to remain as single family, but no additional single family would be allowed to be constructed within the C2 district. C2 just also does allow a variety of commercial uses, office, retail, restaurant, a number of different commercial uses. The O3 is a limited commercial zoning district that does allow for single-family duplex or townhouse development. It does open it up for short-term rental type 1 and type 2. The type 1 is owner-occupied. The type 2 is non-owner-occupied. It does have limited hours of operation for retail and commercial uses. And it does also allow other office uses. So as far as specifically your question about the difference between the two for short-term rentals is that the C2 district does allow multifamily use, and therefore it does allow by right and with the license for each unit, it does allow short-term rental type 3. So that means
what is
type 3 is within a multifamily structure. And so if they were
Oh, so if you live on the property, you can have it, is that it?
I'm sorry?
When you say multifamily, you're just talking about...
multifamily is defined as a structure with 3 or more dwelling units in it. So we understand that currently there's only 1 unit on the property, but if it were to be redeveloped in the future into a multifamily, like a triplex or something like that, then short-term rental would be allowed by right with a license in each of those units. As it stands currently, if it gets rezoned to O3, they would not be able to do short-term rental type 3, which is in a multifamily structure, but they could do type 1 or type 2, which is in a single-family structure. So, yes.
So how did
that would be allowed in O3.
Oh, okay. So I guess the reason it went from C2 to O3 at the end of the block was so they could build another facility in the backyard.
I'm not familiar with that exact request, but O3 does allow more than one single-family unit. Yes. On the property, but not multifamily. So they could have a single-family home, a duplex, maybe 2 single-family dwellings on one property, but they can't have more than 3 individual or like multifamily.
Is there a parking requirement associated with the O3?
So parking requirements are based on use. And so with short-term rental, they have to provide at least 1 parking space per bedroom that is rented out.
So there's 6 bedrooms in that facility, I believe. Is it 6? Yeah. I thought there were 5 in the house and 1 in the back. So that's a change from its prior use.
I'm not familiar with.
Have you had the property very long?
The front house was, I believe, used as a rental to buy rooms with other students potentially, as far as I'm aware, but I don't, that's from the previous owner. I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm answering questions.
Sorry about that.
I'll address that.
I've given to do that sort of thing in the past, my apologies.
No, you're fine.
So basically, it does enhance the potential for it to go to short-term rental. I do understand the master plan. I do understand that neighborhood has been going 03. So notwithstanding the foregoing, I would oppose it. And I would appreciate your consideration given to that. And I would like for you to look into the 03 down the street that now has an additional facility in the back. Beyond that, I appreciate your opportunity for me to address you. And I do appreciate your service. I've learned with my service that no good deed goes unpunished. Thank you. Oh, and here's, I didn't put this in the mail because it wouldn't have made it on time.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, guys.
Is there anyone else to speak in opposition to the item? Mr. Sibley, would you care to make any comments?
I apologize if I was speaking out of turn. I was, when I was being asked questions, I will say to answer the questions that were being asked, that it is a 4-bedroom house in the front part. That is the intended change is primarily aimed at that. There is a back house that was previously used as a 1-bedroom apartment. I'm using that as a office space at this point for myself. And so it's not a owner occupied. I won't be living there, but I do have, we'll have an office on there that I use for meetings when I'm not working at home now. COVID did change a little bit of how I work as well. Just so it's clear, I do believe there's parking. There is precedent for this type of use there, and I would just ask you all for your approval and answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sibley.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, appreciate it. Okay, we will close our public hearing. We have a recommendation of approval from city staff, and we will entertain a motion.
I move that we recommend approval based on staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Vickers. Do we have any final discussion before we take a vote? Please poll the commission.
Cole,
Yes.
Fajardo,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Ramos,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Vickers.
Yes.
Motion passes. Our final item on the agenda tonight, in the case of ABD-21-11, what is the recommendation of city staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a public hearing on a request from Mario Guerrero for abandonment of a 20-foot, 0.16 acre alley located between James Avenue and Spate Avenue and from South 23rd Street to South 24th Street. We mailed out 24 notices and had 0 returned on this request.
Thank you.
Oh,
sorry.
It's okay. Planning Services recommends approval of the abandonment request based on the following findings and subject to the following conditions. The findings are that public use of the public right-of-way is not required for the proper flow of traffic or for emergency vehicle access to the area, and 2, utility access for surrounding properties is not adversely impacted by the abandonment of the right-of-way. The conditions are 1, a 20-foot sanitary sewer easement must be retained for the area of the abandoned alley, and 2, applicant must provide exhibits from an RPLS for each adjoining property owner for quitclaim deed preparation.
Thank you. Apologize for jumping the gun there. Okay, is the applicant or is her representative here to speak in favor of the item? Is anyone here to speak in opposition to the item? Okay, we will close our public hearing. We have a recommendation of approval by city staff. Are there any further discussion by council members or commission members?
It's approval with conditions, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we recommend approval with conditions based on staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Vickers. Any final discussion? Please poll the commission.
Cole,
Yes.
Fajardo,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Ramos,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Vickers?
Yes.
Motion passes. That concludes our agenda for this evening. Hope everyone have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.